Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for a special Lettermen Live brought to you by Byers Auto. The spring game just a couple days away, so I've got my man Tim May hanging out with us again. Jeremy Birmingham, as always, with me.
I'm your man. Okay, that sounds good.
Man, I'll think of something else. Just the GOAT is here. How about that? And there's not enough mics this week, so it's going to be a little bit different show than we've had to do. Tim's probably just going to grab it from me for the most part, but take us through. They're almost done here, Tim. Like, what have we learned? What, just for your number one overall takeaway?
It's kind of like a light fog where you're on a boat, and there's rocks out there, but you're kind of cutting through, and you're kind of seeing a little bit through the fog is that maybe Justin Fields is the number one quarterback, but they don't want to say it real loud. Without a doubt, you get the idea from the foghorns you're hearing that Garrett Wilson's going to play. They want him to be able to block better, but my number one look at a wide receiver is will he go up and make catches that other guys won't. Garrett Wilson seems to fill that void, and every time I've been on with you guys, I brought up the name Josh Proctor because I think that's going to be one of the emerging players on this on this football team, especially on defense. And, of course, offensive line, I think they've been able to generate some depth just because of guys missing, injuries, et cetera. But those are the things that kind of stand out to me so far.
Yeah, and Tim took it right there. Garrett Wilson is going to be on display on Saturday. The football is going to be in the air a lot. It always is in the spring game. And then that means that Josh Proctor is going to have a chance to throw his weight around a little bit too. Those two guys, your takeaway from the spring, or what else is on your mind?
Well, don't expect him to throw his weight around too much because, as Ryan Day told us today, they're not going to be tackling on Saturday. So expect him to be bumping into people.
Thudding up.
Bumping into people aggressively, I guess. To me, I think about the 2016 season and how vital Malik Hooker became for Ohio State and how he changed the defense. We watched as Brendan White did that a little bit last year, but it wasn't from a dynamic playmaker standpoint. It was more of a stabilizing force. Yeah. And I completely agree that Josh Proctor is a guy that can be that playmaker in the back half of the defense that they've lacked since Malik Hooker left. As far as Garrett Wilson goes, I would caution tempering enthusiasm just because the depth chart is so deep at wide receiver, but he is a next level guy. Like he's a talent that is different than everyone else here, and that's not a knock on Austin Mack or Ben Victor or any of those other guys, but he is a different type of player. And I think that people should be very excited about what they see and the idea of Justin Fields or Matt Baldwin throwing the ball down the field a lot more. I think you're going to see more of those deep shots, and I think you're going to see more of the explosive running play out of the quarterback with Justin Fields in as well. And I know that excites Buckeye fans. And if you look, go back to the Braxton Miller era, those big plays out of the quarterback run game is really what changed the offense. So that's what I'm thinking for Saturday.
I think it's interesting, Tim, and you guys both talk about Josh Proctor. There's so much still that we don't know about how this defense is going to align and play. Well, if Brendan White is at bullet, does that mean that you put Josh Proctor in there? How does Jordan Fuller fit in? He's missed all of spring. Right. You know what you have in a veteran safety. Does that mean you're going to play with all three of those? What does it mean for Shaun Wade? It's like this team has more than enough talent to do whatever it wants.
Well, they can mix and match right now. They can put different kinds of nickels on there. Buffalo nickel, regular Thomas Jefferson nickel, whatever kind of nickel you're looking for. And the great thing about playing the bullet position is, like Greg Madison just pointed out, you can be a safety one play, an outside linebacker the next play, and then the 9 technique, meaning a rush guy, on the next play and not even change personnel. The thing about Shaun Wade is I thought Shaun Wade, as the year went on and on last year, got better and better, more confident. And, he's that, the kind of guy that as you look at conventionally, you would put on the slot guy because he is a cornerback at heart, whether he wants to admit it or not. And so I think they have all these options. But like you said, with Jordan Fuller missing all of spring as he recovers, Josh Proctor's had a chance to shine along with some other guys. And so how does it all mix and match? We're not going to know that till the end of August.
It's funny, injuries can be such a death knell for a football team, but in the spring when you have experienced guys sitting out because of nagging injuries, it can be such a boost to a program that needs to get guys who missed opportunities last year to see the field. It gives them an opportunity to do things they haven't been able to do, and it really provides a weird boost when you think about
injuries. You could go running back. J.K. Dobbins doesn't need to do all that much. get Marcus Crawley out there a little bit. Safety, we mentioned Jordan Fulworth there, Munford at left tackle. We go on and on with these guys that are injured. As long as they're veteran guys, they don't need to play in spring.
Right, and like we've pointed out a couple times on here, a guy like Gavin Cupp, at left guard, I mean, he's gotten to play a lot. I mean, he's been with the first team every time we've gotten to watch practice. We'll see how it goes tomorrow on Saturday. But the bottom line is, I mean, that's what spring is for, is bring those guys along. But they're not going to forget, they're not going to forget Jordan Fuller. Was a guy we were talking about a year ago in the spring. He became a captain. And so I think where they are, they're in a good place defensively in the secondary. I mean, Okuda, for example, we've seen a different kind of player out of him in the last, 7 months.
Back to the Rose Bowl,
exactly. And Arnett, I mean, he returned. I mean, he's looked pretty good out here, in my opinion. A lot of times it takes a little while for that cornerback to not only get his feet and his head going in the same direction, if you follow my drift there. I think we've seen some confidence in him. So the Tyreek Johnson has come along. Dallas Gant. I mean, there are all these names you can throw out there that have really had good springs, but how do they figure in when it's the final push in the fall?
Yeah, which Ryan Day said on Wednesday that he's not going to put one out. There's no need to. You've got a training camp in August where you can sort all that out. But it's interesting to go back to some of these positions again, Berman. You don't need to rush things with Damon Arnett, but everybody that has criticized him for the ups and downs in the past, you and I have said this before, and I think that Tim's on the same page here. You look at him, and he is a next level NFL caliber athlete. Mm-hmm. He struggled at times with pass interference. I don't know if the way that they played schematically last year was ideal for him. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. But the people that scoff, say, all he did was get in a fight and he's getting more penalty flags even in spring ball. That's not even close. What we watched on Friday in an open practice was a guy force a fumble right off the bat, right, come up with an interception, several bat downs, outside of what he was doing with that one incident, which was way overblown and completely normal for spring football or any period of football, as violent as this game is. You're missing the boat if you don't think that Damon Arnett is very important to this team.
I'll tell you, I talked to a parent of a recruit Tuesday night, and they were talking about Jeff Hafley and what the current players have been saying to recruits and their families about what Hafley's done. And you could not have higher praise for a coach in such a short amount of time for what he's done as far as turning around the mentality of that room for a group that was very maligned a year ago. And again, you had good players. Kendall Sheffield's going to be an NFL draft pick. Jeffrey Okuda is going to be an NFL draft pick. Damon Arnett, Sean Wade, these are all going to be NFL draft picks. And they were really torn apart last year by fans and media. And the biggest repair job that Jeff Hafley had to do when he got here was on their psyche, and it has changed. So that is a group that now is walking around confident again, and you're not going to see most of those guys on Saturday. You're not going to see Okuda play much. You're not going to see Arnett play much, but it's a huge day, as you mentioned, for guys like Tyreek Johnson and Sevyn Banks. Ryan Day said he wants to put good on good, so we're going to find out who the good is in that secondary on Saturday.
Think about the luxury it is for these guys who have now stuck around in this secondary. They're now being coached by a former NFL coach, a guy who knows what. And let's face it, all these guys aspire to play at the next level. And but now they're taking cues from a guy who is coached at that level.
Okuda's taking kudos?
Yeah, Okuda's taking cues. And but I mean, and then from a recruiting standpoint, how much that plays into it too. I'm sitting here and I remember I asked Ryan Day today about, he's been in a eval seat of quarterbacks for the NFL, and I asked him, what does Dwayne Haskins Jr. bring to the table? And that's what these guys are getting. Greg Madison coached in the NFL for a while.
Yep.
The depth of this staff is really, when you really look at it, is very interesting.
There's a lot of ground to cover here on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. We're trying to get to as much of it as we can. Tim, you brought up something I was going to ask you about. Several people were wondering, well, Dwayne Haskins isn't going to Nashville. Is he falling out of the first round because Peter King said that he was slipping in some people's minds? Well, I mean, Ryan Day said Dwayne Haskins was always planning to be at home at Maryland with his family. He confirmed that to Lettermen Row yesterday. That's coming in a story on our site shortly.
No big surprise.
But it's crazy to me. We're obviously in the silly season, and you asked about this. Clay Hall asked about this. The guy's an NFL quarterback, and I would be absolutely stunned if he falls out of the top 10.
I mean, in my opinion, he's still the highest evaluated quarterback in this draft. I mean, Kyler Murray fits a niche or scratches an itch for Cliff Kingsbury, let's face it, at Arizona. And you can see that because they're going from having a number one draft pick quarterback to getting another one, it looks like. But the point is, this is the period of time where misinformation and disinformation comes at you in rapid waves because teams are trying to dissuade other teams from taking the guy they really want, et cetera.
I want to be very clear. As a Bengals fan, I am hoping Dwayne Haskins falls out of the top 10 and falls
right
to number 11. So stop there.
I'm sitting in the basement at Keith Byers' house on draft day in whatever that was, 1986. And the Philadelphia Eagles called him, and he was coming off that foot injury, and they were asking him if he'd be, if they took him, would he be interested in having a screw put in his foot to hold his fifth metatarsal together better? And he said no. And then 5 minutes later, the Philadelphia Eagles drafted him number 1. So you never know what's coming around the corner next. But Dwayne Haskins Jr., in my opinion, is not lost any ground. It probably has gained ground, and now it's like but you never know with what's the team. If the Giants pass on him, how far will he slide,
I can't imagine much far, as Berm said, down to 11.
Yeah, guys
or
like
teams
him don't come along very often.
They don't, and I think that teams will be missing out if they pass on him. Berm, this weekend to tee you up for your specialty on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Recruiting-wise for the spring game, I'm not sure that it's the hugest weekend that they could ever have. They had a big one a couple weekends ago with some elite recruits coming in. How does this one stack up? What's on the line?
Well, it's turning into a bigger weekend, and most importantly is for the 2020 class, because we don't want to get too far ahead and worry about 2021, despite the fact that the best player in that class, or the best 2 players in that class, in my opinion, in Jack Sawyer and Marvin Harrison Jr. will both be on campus. But 2020 is where it's at and what we're worried about. Jack Miller's coming in from Arizona. Jackson Smith and Jigba's coming in from Texas. Paris Johnson will be in town. Darion Henry will be in town. You're going to see a lot of Ohio State players focusing on, I think, and I don't mean recruits, I mean players and families talking to Paris and his mom and helping them understand exactly why he's here to begin with. So that's the real
what he's
story.
doing.
That
What be blocking more than anything else.
But I think that the biggest thing for Ohio State is really to put forward that 75,000 people walking out, and as you walk out of that tunnel and you see 75,000 fans for a scrimmage, that's an eye opener for recruits. And I think that the biggest thing for Ohio State is just relationship building this weekend, especially with guys like Jack and Paris, who haven't been around each other much, with Jack not being back here since last November and Jackson not since last October. So that's the real big thing. But 2021, it is an interesting possibility that you could see Marvin Harrison and his quarterback, Kyle McCord from Philadelphia, both try to commit this weekend, and that could throw things into a tizzy in 2021.
It is amazing. Recruiting literally never stops. And to hear Ryan Day talk about how when you go from an assistant coach to a head coach, exactly. But it's Jim Trustle's famous line was, recruiting was like shaving. You miss one day, you look like a bum. Although I don't shave anymore. Well, I trim. But anyway, but I digress. But that to me is the most, like Ryan Day talking about, the head coach now. He's at the top of the pyramid when it comes to that, and he can never take a day off in that regard. So it's been very eye-opening experience more than anything else for Ryan Day, I think.
Yeah, no days off for Ohio State. No days off for the Lettermen Row crew as we cover Ohio State football all year. Recruiting, the team, everything. Especially Saturday, it's going to be a big one, so let's hope for some good weather. It's going to be a running clock in the second half, so we can all get out of there maybe a little bit early if we enjoy that weather that we get. So hoping for a big one. Berm and I will be there. Tim will obviously be there holding down, doing his thing. Maybe we'll talk with him after it's over, see what we learned from the Ohio State spring game. So for Tim May and Jeremy Birmingham, I'm Austin Ward. We'll see you next time on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto.